What if tomorrow wasn't guaranteed? What if, in the space of a heartbeat, everything we know, cities, families, history itself, was erased in fire? Nuclear war movies strike at that deepest fear, showing us not just explosions and fallout, but the fragile thread holding civilization together. They're not just entertainment, they're mirrors, reflecting how close humanity has come to pressing that final button. Some make us laugh nervously, others leave us hollow and shaken, but all of them force us to stare straight into the abyss. So buckle up, because we're about to revisit 15 most terrifying nuclear war movies ever made. They feel less like fiction and more like prophecy. Each one a chilling reminder that the end of the world has never been further away or closer. Number 1. Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, 1964. Only Stanley Kubrick could take the most terrifying idea imaginable, the end of the world by nuclear war, and turn it into one of the funniest films ever made. That's the paradox of Dr. Strangelove, a comedy that also happens to be the most chillingly accurate portrayal of nuclear annihilation. Released in 1964, at the peak of Cold War paranoia, the film shows how one unhinged general can trigger a chain reaction that spirals toward global destruction. Originally planned as a straight thriller based on the novel Red Alert, Kubrick quickly realized the logic of mutually assured destruction was so insane that only dark comedy could do it justice. The result? Peter Sellers juggling 3 unforgettable roles, including the wheelchair-bound ex-Nazi scientist whose accidental salutes became iconic, and George C. Scott delivering one of his most memorable performances. Kubrick turned the absurdity of nuclear strategy into a satire so sharp it still feels dangerously real today. In Dr. Strangelove, Scott's unhinged hawk of a general and Sterling Hayden's paranoid commander are both absurdly hilarious, and yet disturbingly believable. The War Room, designed by Ken Adam, looks less like a film set and more like a cathedral of power, a place where men decide the fate of the world under blinding lights. Kubrick's obsessive detail made it so convincing that the US Air Force itself grew uneasy. But beneath the dark humor lies something chilling, the Doomsday Machine, a device that would erase humanity without a single human decision. It wasn't pure fiction. Real Cold War doctrines weren't far off. And as Vera Lynn's "We'll Meet Again" floats over the final montage of mushroom clouds, Kubrick forces us to laugh at the very mechanisms that could wipe us out, then leaves us with the uneasy truth that the punchline might someday be real. Number 2. Threads, 1984. If Dr. Strangelove makes you laugh nervously, Threads leaves you shattered. This BBC television drama isn't just about nuclear war. It's about the slow, merciless unraveling of civilization itself. Set in Sheffield, England, it starts deceptively small. Young couples planning weddings, parents running errands, teenagers hanging out. But in the background, NATO and the Soviet Union inch toward the unthinkable. Director Mick Jackson lulls you into the comfort of everyday life, so that when the bombs finally fall, the effect is like a sledgehammer. Firestorms consume the city, buildings collapse, and thousands die in an instant. Yet the true horror lies not in the blast, but in what comes after. The second half of the film drags us through the bleak aftermath. Starvation, radiation sickness, lawless chaos, and the death of hope itself. Threads isn't entertainment. It's a warning written in ash and silence. What if the very fabric of human language unraveled? Education vanished, and society collapsed into silence and ruin. Threads doesn't just imagine this nightmare, it drags you into it with unflinching realism. Every detail, from the burn-scarred makeup to the fallout patterns, was grounded in real scientific projections. The BBC even drew from government documents, making the horror feel less like fiction and more like prophecy. The narration, delivered in the flat, clinical tone of a documentary, strips away any hint of heroism or hope. Unlike Hollywood's nuclear thrillers, which sometimes leave room for survival, Threads leaves you in absolute darkness. Its final image, an emaciated young woman delivering a stillborn child in a gutted hospital, is one of the most devastating moments ever put on television. Even decades later, those who saw it on its first broadcast remember sleepless nights, shaken to the core, convinced they had glimpsed not a story, but their own future. Number 3. The Day After, 1983. Imagine a TV movie so powerful that it froze an entire nation in silence. When it aired on ABC, over 100 million Americans tuned in, making it the most watched television film in U.S. history. Schools canceled lessons to host debates, churches held emergency prayer services, and even the White House couldn't ignore it. President Ronald Reagan later confessed the movie rattled him so deeply it shifted his thinking on nuclear disarmament. Set in Lawrence, Kansas, the The film begins with farmers, students, shopkeepers, and doctors living ordinary lives. The tension builds slowly. Radio bulletins, TV reports, whispers of US-Soviet escalation. Then, without warning, the missiles launch, and ordinary life shatters into apocalypse. Imagine sitting in your living room on a quiet Sunday night when suddenly the TV screen erupts with blinding flashes, shockwaves tearing through houses, and ash falling from the sky like snow. That was the moment the day after shattered American television history. In an era before CGI, every horrifying effect, burns, sickness, chaos, was created with practical tricks and raw authenticity that made it feel all too real. But the film went beyond spectacle. The second half dragged viewers into the nightmare aftermath. Food vanishing, law collapsing, families fleeing, and neighbors clinging desperately to scraps of humanity. Jason Robards' haunting portrayal of a doctor fighting to save lives while his own body gives way to radiation sickness remains unforgettable. What made the day after truly chilling wasn't just the rubble of destroyed cities. It was the human faces staring back, reminding audiences this wasn't entertainment. It was a warning, a terrifying glimpse of what failure in diplomacy could mean for everyone. Number 4. Fail-Safe, 1964. What if the end of the world came not from madness or malice, but from a simple mistake? That's the nightmare at the heart of Fail-Safe, 1964. Released the same year as Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove, Sidney Lumet's film strips away satire and replaces it with suffocating realism. A computer glitch accidentally orders American bombers to obliterate Moscow, and suddenly the fate of millions hangs on whether leaders can undo the irreversible. Shot in stark black and white, with tight close-ups and claustrophobic rooms, Lumet turns dialogue into a pressure cooker. Henry Fonda delivers a haunting performance as the US president, forced to make an unthinkable choice in the name of humanity. No jokes, no relief, just ticking clocks, humming machines, and the unbearable silence of doom closing in. What if the end of the world didn't come with fire and fury, but with silence? Fail-Safe delivers exactly that. No triumphant music, no heroic last stand, just still frames of New York's annihilation after the president makes the unthinkable choice: destroy his own city, his own people, even his own wife, to prove America's intentions to the Soviets. Where Dr. Strangelove let audiences laugh nervously, Fail-Safe left them frozen, staring into a silence that felt all too real. It's not malice, the film warns us, but one mistake, a single human error that could erase civilization. Number 5. On the Beach, 1959. Imagine knowing the end of the world is coming, not with a bang, but with a slow, unstoppable drift of invisible poison. That's the quiet terror of On the Beach, Stanley Kramer's haunting adaptation of Neville Shute's novel. Far from mushroom clouds or explosions, the film takes us to Australia, one of the last places still alive after nuclear war. Gregory Peck, Ava Gardner, Fred Astaire, and Anthony Perkins play survivors waiting for the fallout to reach them, and it will. There's no saving grace, no last-minute miracle, just a handful of months left. Some race cars to feel alive, some drink to forget, some fall into fragile romances, and others cling to daily routines as if normalcy could hold back death. Kramer strips away spectacle, and instead leans on silence, music, and intimate performances. The result is suffocating inevitability. Ava Gardner's tender, doomed love, with Peck's stoic commander, turning into one of cinema's most quietly devastating goodbyes. Fred Astaire, better known for dancing across glittering stages, delivers one of his rare dramatic turns here, not with charm, but with despair. He plays a scientist torn between the futility of survival and the desperate need to meet the end with dignity. The film's most chilling moment arrives not in an explosion, but in silence. A banner flapping in an abandoned city, pleading, "There is still time, brother." It feels less like a message to the characters than a warning to us. Upon release, On the Beach was slammed by critics as too bleak for audiences to bear. Yet time has transformed it into one of cinema's most powerful anti-nuclear statements, a reminder that the end may not roar with fire, but whisper with emptiness. Number 6. The War Game, 1966. What if a film felt so real that broadcasters locked it away for nearly 20 years? That's the case with Peter Watkins's The War Game, a pseudo-documentary so convincing the BBC deemed it too terrifying for television audiences. Shot in a raw, cinema verite style, it plunges viewers into the nightmare of a nuclear strike on Britain. The story is brutally straightforward. Rising tensions ignite a nuclear exchange, and Kent becomes ground zero. The camera doesn't flinch. Firefighters collapse from heat exhaustion. Civilians are blinded in an instant flash. Looters are executed in the streets. Watkins drew from government emergency plans and real scientific data to craft every harrowing detail of fallout, casualties, and social collapse. The result was so authentic that many mistook it for a genuine documentary, making the war game one of the most chilling what-if scenarios ever put on film. The voice is cold, clinical, almost inhuman, and that's what makes it unbearable. There are no heroes here, no last-minute rescues, only the slow collapse of ordinary lives as survival itself crumbles. The war game was so disturbing that, despite winning the 1967 Academy Award for Best Documentary Feature, the BBC locked it away for nearly 2 decades, terrified it would spark mass panic. When it finally aired in 1985, it wasn't just a film, it was a time capsule of Cold War dread, a brutal reminder of just how unprepared humanity remains for the unthinkable. Number 7. Testament, 1983. What if the end of the world didn't come with firestorms and mushroom clouds, but with silence, the kind that slowly steals everything you love? Lynn Littman's Testament, starring Jane Alexander, is perhaps the most quietly devastating nuclear film ever made. Unlike The Day After, which showed mass destruction, Testament stays in one small California town, untouched by blasts but poisoned by fallout. There are no explosions, no grand visuals, just the slow unraveling of ordinary life. The lights go out, food runs low, neighbors vanish, and sickness creeps in. At its core is Alexander's shattering performance as a mother desperately trying to protect her children, even as she must bury them one by one. Her quiet strength earned her an Academy Award nomination, but it's the film's restraint that makes it unforgettable. What if the end of the world didn't come with explosions, but with silence? Testament does exactly that. Born from a 3-act play, the film trades spectacle for suffocating intimacy, unfolding like a slow bleed inside a small California town. The horrors creep in quietly, a neighbor vanishing, a child too weak to rise from bed, a church bell marking yet another funeral. Instead of generals and governments, it focuses on kitchen tables without food, children without futures, and a mother who counts time by losses instead of days. Critics hailed its restraint, its refusal to sensationalize, grounding terror in the ordinary. By the end, Testament doesn't shock so much as hollow you out, leaving behind not a spectacle of apocalypse, but an autopsy of love, family, and hope, undone by fallout. Number 8. By Dawn's Early Light, 1990. What if the world's end hinged on a single, impossible decision? Premiering on HBO as the Soviet Union teetered on collapse, this Cold War nail-biter imagines exactly that. Adapted from William Procknow's novel Trinity's Child, the story begins with a rogue missile launch that sparks an unstoppable chain reaction between the US and USSR. But what sets it apart isn't just the missiles in the sky, it's the people in the war rooms, forced to gamble with humanity's survival under crushing split-second pressure. What if the fate of the world rested on a single broken phone line? In By Dawn's Early Light, James Earl Jones commands from the skies, racing to prevent a nuclear exchange as miscommunication pushes the superpowers to the brink. Down below, Powers Booth and Rebecca De Mornay soar as bomber pilots torn between obeying orders and saving humanity, while in the Oval Office, the president faces the unthinkable, whether to unleash a final civilization-ending strike. Unlike the flashy doomsday spectacles of its era, this 1990 thriller strips away the sensationalism, delivering a chillingly realistic portrait of how fragile the chain of command and survival can be. One wrong move, that's all it takes. An unauthorized launch spiraling into a nightmare that neither superpower can escape. Shot with real B-52 bombers and KC-135 refueling planes, the film grounds its tension in chilling realism. Though often compared to earlier classics like Fail-Safe, it carves out its own space as a gripping warning. Nuclear war might not come from hatred or deliberate attack, but from a dangerous mix of miscommunication, miscalculation, and pride. Number 9. When the Wind Blows, 1986. Don't let the soft, hand-drawn animation fool you. This is no children's cartoon. When the Wind Blows, adapted from Raymond Briggs's illustrated novel and directed by Jimmy Murakami, is one of the bleakest anti-nuclear films ever made. At its heart are Jim and Hilda Bloggs, a sweet, elderly couple in the English countryside who place unwavering faith in government protect and survive pamphlets. They truly believe that tape on the windows and makeshift shelters will see them through Armageddon. What follows is a devastating lesson in misplaced trust as innocence collides with the brutal reality of nuclear war. What makes When the Wind Blows so devastating isn't the blast of bombs or the roar of jets. It's the quiet, almost tender unraveling of two ordinary lives. When the unthinkable happens, Jim and Hilda, a sweet elderly couple, retreat to their living room, convinced that a makeshift fallout shelter and a few cups of tea will see them through. They talk about rationing, about keeping their spirits high, never realizing the scale of the disaster unfolding outside. That's where the heartbreak lies. We watch, helpless, as radiation sickness creeps in, hair falling out, skin paling, their bodies growing weaker with each passing scene. Murakami's decision to pair soft, almost childlike animation with such brutal subject matter turns every frame into a jarring contradiction. David Bowie's haunting theme and Roger Waters' mournful score don't just accompany the story, they deepen the inevitability of what's coming. By the time Jim and Hilda huddle together in darkness, whispering prayers as their strength fades, the film has stripped away every illusion. When the Wind Blows isn't about mushroom clouds or military strategy, it's about the quiet horror of trust misplaced, of innocence betrayed, and the simple truth that nuclear war doesn't just obliterate cities, it erases hope. Number 10. Special Bulletin, 1983. Imagine turning on your TV and thinking the world was actually ending. That's exactly what happened in 1983 when Special Bulletin aired on NBC. Shot like a real-time news broadcast, it convinced countless viewers they were witnessing a genuine nuclear standoff. The story follows anti-nuclear activists who hijack a harbor tugboat in Charleston, South Carolina, threatening to detonate a homemade nuclear bomb unless the U.S. agrees to disarm. The realism was uncanny. Handheld cameras, breaking news interruptions, and real newscasters instead of actors. Despite repeated disclaimers, panic spread across living rooms as the drama unfolded. Negotiations played out live on screen, tensions spiked between the captors and the authorities, and reporters scrambled to keep up. Then came the gut punch. The device goes off, the harbor is obliterated, and the broadcast cuts to static mid-sentence. What if the evening news suddenly became the trigger for nuclear war? Special Bulletin wasn't just another TV drama. It was engineered by the same creative minds who would later craft The West Wing, fusing political sharpness with media critique. Shot like a live broadcast, it blurred the line between fiction and reality, sparking furious debate about whether real-time news coverage could actually worsen a hostage standoff. With its mix of political thriller, moral dilemma, and chilling docudrama realism, Special Bulletin dares viewers to face an unsettling question. How quickly could misinformation, panic, and pride transform a tense standoff into national catastrophe? Number 11. WarGames, 1983. What if a teenager playing video games could accidentally start World War III? That's the chilling premise of WarGames, a Cold War classic that fused nuclear paranoia with the rise of hacking culture. Directed by John Badham, the film follows curious high schooler David Lightman, who stumbles into NORAD's top-secret supercomputer while searching for unreleased games. Believing he's just playing a simulation called Global Thermonuclear War, David unknowingly sets off a countdown that could trigger real missile launches and humanity's end. What if a simple game could end the world? In WarGames, the computer can't tell play from reality, and suddenly, teenage curiosity collides with the cold automation of nuclear warfare. That's the brilliance of the film. It shows how innocence and machine logic can spiral into apocalypse. The movie also cemented a chilling idea in pop culture that one day, computers might override human judgment. To ground this nightmare, production designers teamed with the U.S. military, inventing their own vision of NORAD's secret command center. The glowing wall screens, blinking consoles, and towering war room became 80s cinema legend. And when the climax arrives, an AI running endless nuclear strike scenarios, it's less spectacle than warning. Once the game starts, can anyone still stop it? What makes WarGames unforgettable is its chilling final lesson. The only winning move is not to play. That haunting moral, born in the shadow of the Cold War, still resonates in our era of cyber warfare and AI. More than just entertainment, the film seeped into real-world policy, reportedly sparking conversations that helped shape the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act of 1986. It endures as a rare fusion of teenage adventure, political thriller, and technological cautionary tale, one that feels eerily more relevant with every passing decade. Number 12. The Bedford Incident, 1965. What if the spark that ignites nuclear war isn't a missile but a single man's pride? The Bedford Incident takes that terrifying possibility and stretches it across a tense naval standoff in the frozen waters near Greenland. Directed by James B. Harris, the film traps viewers aboard an American destroyer relentlessly shadowing a Soviet submarine. Richard Widmark delivers a chilling performance as Captain Eric Finlander, whose obsession with proving U.S. dominance pushes his crew to the edge. Alongside him, Sidney Poitier plays a journalist who begins as an observer, but soon feels the crushing psychological weight of brinkmanship. The real suspense lies not in explosions, but in the unnerving question: how many small, stubborn decisions can push the world past the point of no return? It doesn't take a villain to end the world, just pride, exhaustion, and one misunderstood order. The Bedford Incident builds its terror not on explosions, but on silence, tension, and human error. Aggressive maneuvers, missed signals, and commands barked with too much arrogance push the crew toward collapse. The walls of the ship close in, the air grows claustrophobic, and mistakes become inevitable. Then it happens. A single misinterpreted command sets off a chain reaction no one can stop. In the terrifying final moments, the crew realizes they've triggered nuclear launch, and there's no way to take it back. The screen cuts to black, and so does the world. What makes the Bedford Incident so chilling is its plausibility. No supervillain, no mad scientist, just ordinary men trapped in the pressure cooker of the Cold War, where fear and duty collide. It's a stark reminder that in those years, the difference between survival and annihilation wasn't miles wide, but razor thin. Number 13. Hiroshima Mon Amour, 1959. You saw nothing in Hiroshima. Nothing. With that haunting line, Alain Resnais's Hiroshima Mon Amour begins not with explosions or sirens, but with whispers, ashes, and skin. This is not a disaster film in the conventional sense. There are no countdown clocks, no mushroom clouds unfurling across the sky. Instead, Resnais crafts a poetic meditation on memory, trauma, and the invisible scars left by war. A French actress arrives in Hiroshima to shoot an anti-war film. There, she begins an affair with a Japanese architect, a man who survived the bombing. As they lie together in a quiet hotel room, the city's history bleeds into their own. The film opens with bodies intertwined, their skin flecked with glittering ash, a surreal echo of the atomic aftermath. What follows is a series of intimate conversations where love and loss become indistinguishable. She speaks of a doomed romance in occupied France. He recalls the day the world ended in fire, and yet neither can fully grasp the other's pain. Hiroshima Mon Amour is a film about what we remember, what we forget, and what we can never truly know. It doesn't show the bomb, it shows the silence that followed. Resnais blends documentary footage with lyrical, nonlinear storytelling, pulling us into a dreamlike meditation on memory, both personal and collective. There are no mushroom clouds here, no cinematic explosions, yet the bombing is everywhere, a ghostly presence haunting every frame. When Hiroshima Mon Amour premiered, it shocked audiences with its raw confrontation of war, trauma, and the terrifying human instinct to bury what hurts most. The film didn't just break ground, it redefined it, becoming a cornerstone of the French New Wave and echoing across world cinema. Its terror lingers not in spectacle, but in the quiet reminder that even our darkest horrors can fade, and that forgetting may be the cruelest tragedy of all. Number 14. Panic in Year Zero, 1962. Imagine waking up one morning as an ordinary dad taking your family on a camping trip, only to hear the radio announce Los Angeles has just been hit by a nuclear attack. That's the chilling hook of Panic in Year Zero, 1962, directed by and starring Ray Milland. Instead of dazzling viewers with mushroom clouds and destruction, the film zeroes in on something far scarier: what happens to human morality when the world falls apart. Cut off from the city's annihilation, Milland's character quickly shifts from mild-mannered suburban father to hardened survivor, willing to rob, threaten, and even kill if it means protecting his wife and children. Society's rules vanish overnight, and what's left is a brutal game of survival where trust is deadly and mercy is a luxury. Shot on a shoestring budget, the movie skips spectacle and instead builds its terror from silence, shadows, and the slow unraveling of civilization. You never actually see the bombs fall, but their invisible weight presses on every choice the family makes. By the end, as they drive back toward a smoldering Los Angeles, there's no triumphant victory, only uncertainty and dread. Panic in Year Zero reminds us that nuclear war isn't just about destruction. It's about what it strips away inside us. Number 15. The Divide, 2011. What happens when survival strips away the last shreds of humanity? The divide throws 9 strangers into a basement after a sudden nuclear attack on New York City, and what begins as fragile cooperation quickly rots into chaos. As the days drag on, trust erodes, supplies dwindle, and primal instincts take over. Paranoia breeds violence, cruelty festers, and the descent into madness feels inescapable. Xavier Gens doesn't flinch. He forces us to watch humanity crumble from the inside out. When survival becomes a competition, humanity is the first casualty. In the divide, food shortages ignite brutal fights, alliances crumble, and the shelter that once promised safety transforms into a prison of abuse and desperation. The radiation outside may be deadly, but the cruelty festering inside proves just as lethal. Refusing to offer even a flicker of hope, the film drags viewers into a suffocating spiral of paranoia and violence. Its oppressive production design, raw performances, and unrelenting bleakness make it less about rebuilding after disaster, and more about watching morality rot away when the world has already ended. So what do all these films really tell us? That the end doesn't always come with a bang. It can creep in through silence, through one mistake, through misplaced trust, or through pride disguised as power. Nuclear war movies aren't just entertainment. They're cinematic sirens, warnings carved into celluloid, forcing us to stare at the abyss and ask ourselves, could this really happen? The terrifying answer is yes. Maybe that's why these stories linger long after the credits roll. They remind us that survival isn't just about weapons or war rooms. It's about choice, restraint, and the fragile thread holding civilization together. Because in the end, one button, one error, or one flash in the sky could change everything. And if these films have shown us anything, it's this. The scariest part of nuclear war isn't the mushroom cloud. It's the possibility that it could start tomorrow.